High Commander Vextrol of the Galactic Council's Military Assessment Division shifted uncomfortably in his crystalline observation chamber. His compound eyes focused intently on the holographic display before him, tracking the movements of a small Earth vessel designated Pathfinder. The ship's erratic flight pattern defied all known tactical protocols, making his sensory tentacles twitch with growing concern. "Most irregular," he muttered, dictating notes into his neural recorder. "Human vessel continues to execute unpredictable maneuvers without apparent strategic value." The Pathfinder was part of Earth's first diplomatic mission to the Galactic Council's central worlds. What should have been a routine escort operation had turned into an impromptu tactical assessment when 3 Drachnid pirate vessels emerged from quantum space, targeting the diplomatic convoy. Instead of following standard defensive procedures, forming a protective sphere around the diplomatic vessel, the human ships had scattered in seemingly random directions. The Council's escort vessels maintained their textbook formation, their commanders watching in horror as the humans appeared to abandon their posts. "Completely untrained savages," sneered Sub-Commander Ixtal, Vextrol's second-in-command. "They'll get their diplomats killed with such." The words died in Ixtal's throat as the Pathfinder executed a maneuver that should have torn the ship apart. The vessel cut its primary engines, rotating on its axis while maintaining its original vector, bringing all its weapon systems to bear on the pursuing pirates, while technically still retreating. On the Pathfinder's bridge, Captain Sarah Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Just like shooting skeet on my grandfather's farm," she murmured, before raising her voice to address her crew. "All batteries, synchronized fire on my mark. Let's show these pirates why you don't corner a human." The pirates, having never encountered such tactics, maintained their standard pursuit formation. A fatal mistake. The Pathfinder's synchronized weapon barrage caught the lead vessel completely off guard, its shields optimized for frontal assault rather than an attack from a fleeing target. Vextrol's recording became increasingly agitated. Humans appear to be applying principles of their primitive atmospheric combat to void warfare. They treat space as a fluid medium, much like their planet's oceans, rather than adhering to established 3-dimensional combat matrices. The battle was over in minutes. The Pathfinder's unorthodox maneuvers had completely disrupted the pirates' formation, forcing them to break their carefully coordinated attack patterns. The human vessel had turned their own momentum against them, using minimal energy expenditure to maintain tactical advantage. A concept Vextrol had only seen in theoretical physics discussions, never in actual combat. Most concerning of all, Vextrol continued his report, is their complete disregard for established tactical doctrine. They appear to view our millennia of standardized combat protocols not as wisdom to be learned, but as predictable patterns to be exploited. In the aftermath of the skirmish, the Council's escort commanders requested a tactical review from the Pathfinder's captain. Chen's response was transmitted across all channels. "Where I come from, we have a saying. The most dangerous enemy is the one who doesn't know they're supposed to lose." The implications of that statement kept Vextrol awake for several cycles. Humans weren't simply ignorant of proper combat protocols, they were uninhibited by them. Their species' relatively brief existence as a spacefaring civilization, which the Council had initially dismissed as a weakness, was proving to be their greatest strength. Final observation, Vextrol recorded, his appendages trembling slightly. Human tactical innovations appear to stem from their species' remarkable ability to view limitations as challenges rather than absolutes. They don't merely think outside of conventional boundaries. They appear fundamentally unable to acknowledge such boundaries exist. He paused, watching as the Pathfinder resumed its position in the diplomatic convoy, its crew already conducting performance reviews of their recent engagement, analyzing and adapting their tactics in real time. Recommendation: immediate reclassification of human military potential. They are not, as previously assessed, a primitive species learning to adapt to galactic standards. They are, rather, a force of tactical evolution that may well redefine those standards entirely. May the eternal void help us all if we ever find ourselves on the opposite side of their innovation. The diplomatic mission continued its journey to the Council's central worlds, but news of the encounter spread quickly through classified channels. In chambers across the galaxy, military strategists began urgently reviewing their assumptions about humanity's capabilities. They had expected to teach humans the proper way to conduct warfare in space. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that didn't just break the rules. They rewrote them. As the Pathfinder disappeared into quantum space, Vextrol added one final personal note to his report. In their brief history, humans have adapted from fighting with sharpened stones to crafting weapons that split atoms. They have evolved from tribal conflicts to global warfare, from atmospheric flight to faster-than-light travel. And in each phase, they have demonstrated an uncanny ability to innovate beyond established paradigms. We must ask ourselves, what will they become in the centuries to come? Admiral Helena Jo stood at the command center of Earth Defense Station Artemis, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the approaching Drachnid invasion fleet. 6 months had passed since humanity's first diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council, and the pirates' failed attack had evolved into something far more serious. The Drachnid Imperium, embarrassed by their pirates' defeat, had launched a punitive expedition to teach the upstart humans proper military doctrine. Their fleet of standardized warships moved in perfect geometric formations, exactly as their tactical manuals prescribed. Status report on Project Chimera, Zhao commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the command center. Her chief engineer, Dr. James Rodriguez, pulled up a holographic display of Earth's latest technological adaptation. The hybrid drive systems are fully operational, Admiral, Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. We've successfully merged Council standard quantum drives with our old chemical rocket technology. The resulting thrust signature is, well, let's just say it's giving their sensors fits. The Drachnid fleet's initial scans of Earth's defensive positions had caused considerable confusion among their commanders. Human vessels were appearing as impossible objects on their sensors, simultaneously moving at quantum speeds while exhibiting the heat signatures of primitive chemical rockets. In his observation post, High Commander Vextrol watched with growing fascination. They've taken our most advanced propulsion technology and deliberately made it less efficient, he recorded, his confusion evident. The resulting sensor profile defies all known classification protocols. What the Drachnids failed to understand was that humanity hadn't simply copied Galactic Council technology. They'd reimagined it. The hybrid drives were just the beginning. Earth's engineers had been working around the clock, combining alien tech with human innovation in ways that made traditional tactical computers malfunction. Multiple quantum signatures detected, announced Lieutenant Sarah Chen, recently promoted after her encounter with the pirates. Drachnid fleet is deploying in Standard Assault Formation Delta. Admiral Zhao nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Initiate Operation Trojan Horse. Let's show them why predictability in warfare is a weakness, not a strength. The human fleet appeared to scatter in disarray, their hybrid drives creating chaos on Drachnid sensors. The invasion fleet's commander, Supreme Warmaster Kexthen, watched with disdain as the primitive humans once again failed to maintain proper combat formation. These savages must learn, he broadcast to his fleet. Execute Standard Pursuit Pattern Omega. Today we teach them the proper way to conduct warfare. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. As the Drachnid fleet moved to engage, the human vessels began emitting electromagnetic pulses that exactly matched the frequency of standard Drachnid communication systems. The perfectly ordered formation of alien ships suddenly found themselves receiving phantom commands, their automated systems unable to distinguish genuine orders from the human-generated signals. Impossible, Kexthen sputtered as his tactical display dissolved into chaos. They're using our own communication protocols against us. But those protocols are encrypted with quantum. They didn't break the encryption, Vextrol noted in his report, his appendages trembling with excitement. They simply observed that Drachnid ships automatically accept any signal that matches their exact frequency patterns. The humans identified a pattern, and instead of trying to defeat it, they exploited it. The human fleet's next move demonstrated an even deeper understanding of their opponent's limitations. Each Earth vessel began projecting holographic duplicates of itself, but instead of trying to make perfect copies, they deliberately introduced flaws and variations. The Drachnid targeting systems, programmed to identify and prioritize threats based on perfect pattern recognition, began to fail catastrophically. Their tactical computers are trying to match our ships to their threat assessment databases, Rodriguez explained to Admiral Zhao as they watched the battle unfold. But since none of our signatures exactly match any known configuration, their entire target acquisition system crashes, Zhao finished, nodding with satisfaction. Sometimes being imperfect is the perfect strategy. The Drachnid fleet, their carefully programmed responses now working against them, found themselves unable to effectively target the human ships. Their attempts to revert to manual control only made things worse. Centuries of reliance on automated systems had left their crews ill-prepared for such basic warfare. In his observation post, Vextrol continued his increasingly urgent reports to the Council. Humans have demonstrated the ability to not only adapt galactic technology, but to fundamentally reimagine its application. They view our standardized systems not as advanced technology to be mastered, but as predictable patterns to be exploited. The battle ended not with the destruction of the Drachnid fleet, but with something perhaps more significant, their complete tactical paralysis. Unable to target the human ships effectively, unable to trust their own communication systems, and unable to maintain formation cohesion, the mighty invasion fleet was forced into a humiliating retreat. Final analysis, Vextrol recorded as he watched the Drachnid ships limp back into quantum space. Humans possess a unique ability to identify and exploit patterns that we have taken for granted for millennia. They don't seek to match our level of technological advancement. They adapt it, hybridize it, and use it in ways we never considered possible. Most critically, they appear to view our greatest strengths, our standardization, our precision, our perfect formations, as exploitable weaknesses. Admiral Zhao's final message to the retreating Drachnid fleet was broadcast in clear, unencrypted text. "Thank you for the combat exercise. We've learned much from this encounter. Have you?" In the days that followed, the Galactic Council's Military Assessment Division would be forced to create an entirely new classification for human warfare. They were not, as previously thought, simply an emerging spacefaring species learning to catch up to galactic standards. They were something far more dangerous, innovators who saw possibilities where others saw only rules. General Marcus Thompson stood in Earth's primary quantum communications hub, watching as reports flooded in from across human space. The Drachnid Imperium, stinging from their previous defeat, had adapted their strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, they now employed hit-and-run tactics against human supply lines, using their superior numbers to strike multiple targets simultaneously. "They're learning," Thompson mused, his weathered face reflected in the holographic display. "But they're still thinking like Drachnids." In his observation post, High Commander Vextrol noted the humans' seemingly bizarre response to this new threat. Instead of reinforcing their supply lines with military vessels as standard doctrine would suggest, they were converting civilian mining ships into what they called Q ships, heavily armed vessels disguised as vulnerable cargo transporters. Most irregular, Vextrol recorded. Humans are deliberately presenting apparent weaknesses to bait their opponents. They treat deception not as a last resort, but as a primary tactical option. The first test of this strategy came at the Proxima Centauri mining outpost. A lone human cargo vessel, apparently struggling with engine problems, drifted near the quantum space lane. 3 Drachnid raiders, following their tactical protocols, moved to intercept what appeared to be easy prey. Target in optimal position, reported Lieutenant Commander Mayapudal from the bridge of the disguised mining vessel Sierra. All weapon systems masked by mineral processing signatures. They're reading us as a damaged ore processor. The Sierra's true nature wasn't revealed until the Drachnid vessels were within point-blank range. What they had dismissed as industrial processing equipment suddenly reconfigured into weapons arrays that their sensors had never been programmed to recognize. Fire pattern echo, Padal ordered. Let's show them why humans invented the concept of a trap. The resulting engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. The Sierra's unorthodox weapon placements, combined with the total surprise of their existence, left the Drachnid raiders with no time to implement their standard defensive protocols. 2 vessels were disabled, and the third retreated with significant damage. But the true innovation wasn't in the victory itself. It was in what happened next. Instead of destroying or capturing the disabled Drachnid ships, the humans began broadcasting their tactical communications on open channels. Most concerning development, Vextrol noted frantically. Humans are deliberately allowing their enemies to observe their tactical innovations. They appear to be treating actual combat as a form of psychological warfare. The message was clear. Not only could humans defeat Drachnid tactics, but they were confident enough to let their enemies study how they did it. This unprecedented transparency had an effect that no one in the Galactic Council could have predicted. Within weeks, several minor species that had been subjugated by the Drachnid Imperium began employing similar tactics. Cargo ships became battleships, mining equipment became weapons platforms, and the previously predictable patterns of galactic commerce became a battlefield where nothing could be taken at face value. Their weaponizing uncertainty itself, Vextrol realized, watching as the ripples of human innovation spread across the galaxy. Every civilian vessel becomes a potential threat. Every standard tactical response becomes a potential vulnerability. The Drachnid response was to implement even stricter tactical protocols, attempting to counter uncertainty with increased standardization. It was exactly what humanity had anticipated. Predictability is a luxury we've never had, General Thompson explained to a gathering of Earth's military command. Our entire history is filled with asymmetric warfare, with smaller forces defeating larger ones through innovation and adaptation. We're not just fighting ships, we're fighting their assumptions. The next phase of human strategy demonstrated this principle perfectly. Earth's scientists had developed what they called quantum noise generators, devices that created false quantum drive signatures in apparently empty space. Drachnid fleet movements, entirely dependent on precise quantum space calculations, suddenly became unreliable. They're not just changing the rules of the game, Vextrol recorded, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and admiration. They're changing the nature of space itself. The quantum noise generators had turned vast sectors of space into navigational nightmares for any fleet relying on standard protocols. Ships using human-modified navigation systems, designed to operate with incomplete or unreliable data, could traverse these areas safely. Everyone else had to either adapt or avoid them entirely. Final observation for this phase, Vextrol transmitted to the increasingly concerned Council. Humans have demonstrated that their apparent technological disadvantages are, in fact, strategic advantages. Their history of dealing with uncertainty, their experience with asymmetric warfare, and their willingness to abandon convention have made them masters of unconventional warfare. As he completed his report, Vextrol received word that the Drachnid Imperium had requested a ceasefire with Earth. The terms were telling. They didn't demand human compliance with standard military protocols, but rather requested human assistance in developing new ones. Perhaps, Vextrol mused in his personal notes, the greatest victory humans have achieved is not defeating their enemies, but forcing them to question everything they thought they knew about warfare. In making us adapt to them, rather than the other way around, they have already won a victory more profound than any battlefield triumph. General Thompson's response to the ceasefire request was characteristically human. We're happy to share what we know. After all, the best way to prevent a fight is to make your potential opponents think like you do. Ambassador Diana Chen, daughter of the legendary Captain Sarah Chen, stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, her presence causing ripples of unease through the assembled representatives. The massive chamber, designed to showcase the Council's power and unity, now faced its greatest crisis in 10,000 years. The swarm was coming. Distinguished representatives, Diana began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The Vorkath swarm cares nothing for your protocols, your formations, or your traditions. They are the perfect enemy, adaptable, numberless, and utterly without mercy. High Commander Vextrol, now serving as Chief Military Advisor to the Council, watched the human ambassador with a mixture of concern and hope. His latest report lay before the Council. The swarm has consumed 3 major systems in the past month alone. Standard military responses have proven completely ineffective. The Vorkath operated like no enemy the galaxy had ever faced. Their biological ships evolved in real time during battle, developing countermeasures to any tactic used against them more than once. The Council's standardized military doctrine, designed for predictability and efficiency, was worse than useless against such an adversary. "We propose an alliance," Diana continued, "but not one based on traditional military cooperation. We need to create something new, a fusion of different species approaches to warfare, as unpredictable as the swarm itself." The Council chamber erupted in murmurs. What Diana proposed was unprecedented. The humans wanted to combine the Drachnid's overwhelming firepower, the Zintari's psychic abilities, the Mekthar's living technology, and Earth's unconventional tactics into a single fighting force. "Impossible," declared the Drachnid representative. "Our tactical systems are incompatible with." "Incompatibility is our greatest strength," Diana interrupted, earning more murmurs of shock at the breach of protocol. "The swarm adapts to patterns. By combining our different approaches in unexpected ways, we create something they cannot predict because it has never existed before." In his private chambers, Vextrol reviewed footage from the first joint training exercises. Human officers worked alongside Drachnid commanders, teaching them to operate without rigid protocols. Zintari psychics learned to merge their abilities with Earth's quantum noise generators, creating zones of space that were not just difficult to navigate, but impossible to comprehend. "Most fascinating," he recorded, watching a Mekthar living ship interface with human AI systems. "They are not merely combining technologies, they are creating entirely new forms of warfare. Each species' perceived weaknesses become strengths when combined with others' capabilities." The first real test of this new alliance came at the Battle of Antares. The swarm, confident from their previous victories, encountered what appeared to be a standard Drachnid defense fleet. But hidden within the formation were human Q-ships, their weapons disguised as communication arrays. Zintari psychics clouded the swarm's collective consciousness, while Mekthar bioships released metamorphic enzymes that confused the swarm's evolutionary responses. "They cannot adapt to us," Diana explained to the Council as they watched the battle unfold, "because we are constantly adapting to each other. Every engagement is unique, every tactic a one-time event." The swarm's first defeat was followed by others. The combined fleet, dubbed the Chimera Force by its human commanders, proved impossible for the Vorkath to predict or counter. Traditional species rivalries gave way to a new understanding. Survival required innovation, and innovation required cooperation. Most remarkable of all, Vextrol noted in his report, is how the humans have turned their own experience as newcomers to galactic society into an advantage. They see potential where we saw only limitations, connections where we saw only differences. The alliance transformed galactic society in ways no one had anticipated. The Drachnids, once obsessed with protocol, began encouraging tactical creativity among their officers. The Zintari, traditionally isolated, found new applications for their psychic abilities in combined operations. The Mekthar's living technology evolved in response to collaboration rather than just combat. "Consider the implications," Diana addressed the Council 6 months later. We've created something the swarm cannot defeat precisely because we ourselves don't know what we'll do next. Our strength lies not in standardization, but in diversity, not in tradition, but in innovation. Vextrol's final report on this phase of human influence contained a profound observation. They have taught us that true advancement comes not from perfecting existing systems, but from daring to imagine entirely new ones. In showing us how to work together, humans have given us something more valuable than victory. They have given us evolution. As the combined fleet drove the swarm back from galactic space, Diana made an observation that would be recorded in the Council's archives. The greatest weapon against those who adapt to everything is to become something that has never existed before. Together, we are that weapon. High Commander Vextrol stood in the great archive of the Galactic Council, his aged appendages trembling slightly as he recorded what would be his final report. 10 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Council, and the galaxy had transformed in ways none could have predicted. To future generations who may access these records, he began, I present my witness to the most profound military and cultural revolution in our history. The humans didn't just change how we fight, they changed how we think. The massive holographic display before him showed the graduation ceremony at the newly established Galactic Defense Academy. Young officers from every species trained together, combining their unique abilities and perspectives in ways that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Admiral Helena Joe, now the Academy's senior instructor, watched as a Drachnid cadet demonstrated an unorthodox maneuver in the simulation chamber. The cadet had merged traditional Drachnid precision with human adaptability, creating something entirely new. Perfect imperfection, Zhao commented, nodding approvingly. You understand the principle well. The revolution in military thinking had spread far beyond the battlefield. Species that had once prided themselves on unchanging traditions now celebrated innovation. The Drachnid Imperium, once the epitome of rigid hierarchy, had established what they called chaos units, specialized forces trained to think and act unpredictably. Most remarkable, Vextrol recorded, is how humans have influenced our fundamental understanding of strength. We once believed power came from perfecting established patterns. They showed us that true power lies in the ability to transcend patterns entirely. The latest generation of galactic warships reflected this new philosophy. Gone were the standardized designs that had dominated space warfare for millennia. Each vessel was unique, combining technologies and tactics from multiple species in unexpected ways. Some incorporated living mechthar tissue with human AI systems, while others merged Zinteri psychic amplifiers with Drachnid quantum weapons. We've moved beyond simple adaptation. Diana Chen explained to a class of cadets, her mother's innovative spirit evident in her teaching style. We're not just responding to threats anymore. We're evolving faster than threats can emerge. The final test of this new approach came not from external enemies, but from within. A faction of traditionalists from various species, calling themselves the purists, launched a rebellion against what they saw as the corruption of their martial traditions. Their timing couldn't have been worse. The combined fleet that responded to the purist threat demonstrated just how far galactic warfare had evolved. Ships appeared to move in standard attack formations, only to reveal that each vessel was actually executing its own unique battle plan. What looked like chaos to the purists was actually a complex dance of individual initiatives working in harmony. They still think in terms of patterns, Admiral Joe observed as she coordinated the response. They see our apparent disorder and expect us to be weak. They don't understand that we've transcended the very concept of standard tactics. The purist fleet, equipped with traditional weapons and following classical doctrine, found itself facing an enemy that existed outside the boundaries of their tactical understanding. Each time they identified what appeared to be a pattern in their opponent's movements, it would dissolve, revealing itself as merely one facet of a more complex strategy. Today's battle, Vextrol noted, represents more than a military engagement. It is the final confrontation between two philosophies of warfare, one based on perfecting the known, the other on embracing the unknown. The outcome was decisive. The purest fleet, unable to adapt to constantly changing circumstances, was systematically disabled and contained. True to the principles humanity had introduced, the combined fleet focused on neutralizing the threat rather than destroying their opponents. Final analysis. Vextrol recorded, his voice carrying the weight of decades of observation. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization was not their technology, their tactics, or even their innovative spirit. It was their fundamental understanding that evolution itself is the ultimate weapon. In the Academy's main hall, a new monument was unveiled, bearing words that encapsulated this transformation. The perfect warrior is not one who always wins, but one who always changes. Victory belongs not to the strongest or the most advanced, but to those who dare to reimagine what is possible. Ambassador Diana Chen, watching the next generation of officers train, made an observation that would be added to Vextrol's final report. We didn't just create new ways of fighting, we created new ways of thinking. And in doing so, we've ensured that our civilization will never stagnate again. As Vextrol concluded his final recording, he added a personal note. The humans' greatest victory was not in teaching us their ways, but in showing us that we each had the capacity for innovation within ourselves. They didn't make us strong. They showed us that we had always been strong. We just needed to learn how to embrace change rather than fear it. The galaxy had indeed changed. The rigid hierarchies and standardized doctrines of the past had given way to a new era of constant evolution and adaptation. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth that humanity had known all along. The only constant in warfare, as in life, is change itself.